Thank you so much. My name is Manuel Valdés. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at UNED in Madrid, and I'm going to present this joint work with Cristina Suero and Fabrizio Bernardi on the geography of the educational gradient in the transition to the first child in Spain. Well, as probably most of you know, the relationship between women's education and fertility has evolved over time. There's a lot of recent work that document that while in the past this gradient used to be negative, there are significant differences across space and time. We are going to focus on this dimension of space and examine how it can moderate the impact that education has in fertility behaviors. Indeed, there's numerous works that have reported significant differences across countries in terms of fertility rates, parity progression ratios, period fertility, childlessness, and also the educational gradient in fertility. These cross-country comparisons, even though extremely informative in many senses, they all share the limitation that they assume countries as homogeneous units of analysis. However, one might reason that the local context in which individuals are born and raised is a crucial moderator of the impact that education has on the reproductive behavior. Well, indeed, many works have already looked at within-country variation in terms of, again, parity progression ratios, total fertility rates, childlessness, timing of fertility, but cross-regional studies on the educational gradient in fertility are less common. One notable exception is the work by Nissen and colleagues, where they examine subnational variation at the NUTS2 level in the educational gradient in cohort fertility in 15 European countries. They not only reported a high degree of within-country variation in educational gradients, but they also reported a negative correlation between the size of the educational gradient and the economic development of regions. What we do here is to join this line of research and examine the cross-province variation at the NUTS3 level in the variation of the educational gradient in the timing and the occurrence of the transition to the first child in Spain. A country that is not only characterized by lowest low and latest late fertility, but also by a high degree of internal heterogeneity. Well, just so you know, Spain is a highly decentralized country comprising 2 autonomous cities in the north of Africa, Ceuta and Melilla, and 17 autonomous regions, which are further divided into 50 provinces. These 50 provinces plus 2 autonomous cities is the 52 NUTS3 geographic units that we are going to examine. And across these provinces, you can see that there is a high degree of heterogeneity in terms of fertility behavior, both looking at total fertility rates and also looking at the mean age at first birth, and a high degree of heterogeneity looking at the socioeconomic composition of provinces. For instance, in Álava, which is a province in the north of the country, in the Basque country, the GDP per capita is more than twice the GDP per capita of the province of Cáceres in Extremadura. So a high degree of heterogeneity, and it's in this context that we want to examine the geography of the transition to the first child. In order to do that, we are going to exploit data from the 2011 Spanish population census, which is a data set with more than 4 million observations. And we are going to use data from 2011 because in that year, the census operation collected the total number of children of each woman, with which we can already examine the quantum of fertility because we can know whether women have become mothers or not. But we didn't collect children's birth dates, so we cannot readily examine the tempo of fertility. In order to do that, in order to retrieve data on the timing of fertility, we use co-resident children. Basically, we use the total number of children to identify women that became mothers and count the number of co-resident children. We compare that quantity with the total number of children to identify women that became mothers. And for this group, we use the birth dates of the co-resident children to learn the exact age at each fertility transition. The problem with this method is that it is not possible to reconstruct the reproductive history of women that do not live with older children. And this is a problem if we want to work with all women, because mothers living with older children is a selected group of all mothers. But we can greatly limit this bias if we focus on women below a certain age. Here we're going to focus on women below age 50. You can see that we almost retain 90% of all women that ever became mothers. So if we put together this sample of mothers with all childless women below the age of 50, we have a total analytical sample of 800,000 women for which we know both whether or not they became mothers and the exact age, year and month in which they did so. And for this sample, we are going to use mixture Q models to model both the Q fraction, so the percentage of women that did not make the transition to the first child. And for those who did so, we modeled the median age at first birth, so the age at which 50% of them completed the transition to the first child. We are going to run this model using women's education as the whole predictor, so we distinguish university and non-university educated women, women with a bachelor's degree, basically. And we run this model separately for each province of birth, with immigrants treated as an additional geographical unit, so actually 53 geographical units in our model. But we also rerun the model for the province of residence and use migrant status as a control variable in our model. Okay? So let me show you the results. These are the results for the occurrence in the top panel and the timing in the bottom panel. I'm going to focus exclusively on the timing of the transition. And so you can understand what is plotted here. The yellow bars are the median age at first birth of university-educated women. In that case, it's the province of Guipúzcoa. So women born in Guipúzcoa that attain university education have their children at a median age of 32.3. Blue bars, non-university educated women. In the case of Guipúzcoa, 29.8. The markers are the educational gradient, so just the difference between university and non-university educated women. In the case of Guipúzcoa, it's 2.4. And it's a dark green marker because the difference is significantly different from the educational gradient that we observe at the national level, which is 4.3, is this horizontal line. This is the educational gradient in Spain, in the whole country. So you see that all provinces are ordered by the size of the educational gradient, and it ranges from Guipúzcoa, 2.4 as we saw, to the case of Lugo, where the educational gradient is 6.6 years. So a high degree of heterogeneity. That would be the first takeaway message from the presentation. So there is a high degree of heterogeneity in both the occurrence and very particularly the timing of the transition to the first child in Spain. The second message that I would like to convey is that the educational gradient is the comparison of two quantities, the behavior of non-university and university-educated women. So if we see a high degree of heterogeneity, that could be because women with university or with non-university or university-educated women behave quite differently across the country. So what you see here is the level of association of the educational gradient and the behavior of university and non-university-educated women. And for the timing, what we see is that university-educated women behave quite uniformly all across the country, and it is non-university-educated women are their different behavior across the country what drives the heterogeneity in the educational gradient. So that's the second takeaway. Well, and we don't see that for the occurrence of the transition to the first child. The third thing I would like to emphasize is that there is a weak association between the educational gradient in the timing and the occurrence of the transition to the first child, meaning that we find provinces with a high educational gradient in terms of timing, but a low educational gradient in terms of occurrence. So basically, we cannot infer something about the size of the educational gradient in occurrence just looking at the timing or the other way around. Okay? Well, what else we can do? We can divide this space in 4 quadrants, distinguishing provinces with high and low values of the educational gradient in the timing and the occurrence. We can give different colors to these quadrants and then map them, and this is what we see. And here we can see a clear geographical divide in Spain. Provinces in the northeast of the country exhibit low educational gradients in the timing of the transitions, and the rest of the country exhibit low educational gradient in the timing of the transition to the first child. But probably some of you have already noticed that this map is pretty similar to another map that I have already shown, which is the one for the GDP per capita. So this would suggest an association between the economic development of the regions and the size of the educational gradient, particularly in the case of timing. So moving into that, we can see here that association. For the timing, is a very strong association between the negative association between the GDP per capita and the size of the educational gradient. The richest is a province, the lowest the educational gradient. So that would be the 5th takeaway. And the last takeaway is, again, that the educational gradient is the result of the comparison of 2 quantities. So this association might be driven by an association with the behavior of non-university or university-educated women. So that's what we see here. And if we look at the case of the timing, which is these two graphs here, you can see that university-educated women behave quite uniformly all across the country, irrespectively of the level of economic development of their province of birth. And it is, the behavior of non-university educated women that is extremely related to the economic development of regions. So there's a very strong association between the two. Well, we have conducted several reference checks. I have some extra slides in case you are interested in seeing that, but we rule out that our findings are due to selection into our sample of mothers living with all children, that the composition of the non-university educated group is driving the results, and we also use, as I said, the province of birth instead of the province of residence to find very similar results. And additionally, we also look at the transition to the second child. We do not observe neither the geographical pattern, nor the relationship with the GDP per capita. So just to conclude, I would like to emphasize three things. First, that cross-country comparisons are extremely relevant in many senses, but they treat countries as units more heterogeneous, more homogeneous, than they really are. So we would need data in the future with more disaggregated information at the regional level. The second thing is that it is in the tempo and not so much in the quantum of the transition to the first child that we see a high degree of geographical variation and an association with the province wealth. So we could have obscured this finding if we could just simply look at the occurrence of the transition. And the third thing is that substantively, we observe an association, a pretty strong association between GDP per capita and the educational gradient that is entirely driven by the behavior of non-university educated women. And we thought that being Spain as a latest late fertility country, educated women might have no margin for further delay in the transition to the first child, and that could explain the uniformity of the curve of the country that they exhibit in terms of timing, irrespectively of the province's wealth. That could be all. Thank you very much, and if you have any questions, I'm glad to hear. Thank you.